Good morning and welcome to Rose Red Homestead. Today we're going to do something that I've not ever done before on our channel, and that is we're going to make some cookies. But we're going to do it in a food storage way. I don't bake cookies so much anymore, but I used to when my children were still in our home. I always wanted for our house to be the place where my children's friends gathered. And that way I could keep a good eye on them, make sure that they had good friends and so forth. And so I was baking cookies all the time. And kids loved to come over to our house. After school, I was a school teacher. I taught elementary school during those years. And I was home just about the same time that my children were. And so I made all kinds of cookies. Well, I usually don't make cookies for Jim and me. I have off and on throughout our 26-year marriage, but the holidays are coming, plus having cookies in such a way that they are very easy to just grab off the shelf, dump, stir a couple things in, and bake is really to our advantage, and so we are going to do just that. We are going today to make 3 recipes of dry mix cookies in jars, and so here they are. You can see these empty jars right here. This one is for double chip cookies, this is cowboy cookies, and this is oatmeal cherry chocolate cookies. Now, what I did was, because I have not done dry mix cookies in jars before, of course I had to do some trial runs, and I found some recipes online that do a great job of packing all of the dry ingredients in a jar, and then you add only 3 things. You add vanilla, an egg, and some butter, and then you stir them up and bake them, and so these are going to be very easy for us. Now what I have done is make these empty jars, but behind each empty jar is exactly what that recipe is going to look like. So this is the double chip cookies. Now that recipe is not called double chip cookies. It wasn't called anything except cookie mix. So I've just named it double chip. But the add-ins include anything that you choose. And so I think that what the original recipe pictured was some red and green M&Ms for the holidays. But I have chosen 2 kinds of chips, and I found some Ghirardelli mint chips. And so these are green for the mint. Aren't those pretty? But when I have the band on, they don't show. The lid and the band cover up the green chips. So I'm going to, when we fill our empty jar, I'm going to do that filling just a little bit different. This is cowboy cookies. The original recipe calls for chocolate chips. I'm using butterscotch chips. And this recipe, this is from the Ball Blue Book. This is oatmeal cherry chocolate cookies, and these are fabulous. So we're going to proceed and fill all 3 jars, and then we are going to bake up 1. So we're going to go ahead and proceed, and in fact, I think that we'll go ahead and start, and you may notice that the labels, if you saw the labels on, I am using previously used lids here, and I will eventually take the old writing off the top and put what they are, but I have good strong labels, and the name and what you do on the back is on the back of the jar. Now I have made these for our pantry. All of these suggest that you can decorate these jars up and put bows and fabric on the top and however fancy you want to make them and give them as gifts, and I think that they would be great gifts, but I don't plan to do that. These are just for our pantry, and so that's why I'm labeling them quite plain with just what they are and then what I do when I'm ready to make up the cookies. So give us a second. I'm going to get organized here, and we will be back to do the oatmeal cherry chocolate cookies. You will find the links for all 3 recipes just below the description of this video. So this oatmeal cherry chocolate chip, the full name is Oatmeal Cherry Chocolate Chunk Cookie Gift Jar. So I've just shortened it to oatmeal cherry chocolate cookies. This is a Ball Blue Book, and the recipe is linked so you can follow along. Then it calls for us to, as 2 of the 3 call for us to mix some of the dry ingredients together first before we put them in the jar. but I'm going to do it for all three because I think it is such a good idea. So here is our 1 cup of flour. And then we have a half a teaspoon of baking powder. And notice I have everything all situated so that all I have to do is just reach over and grab whatever it is I'm doing. 1/2 teaspoon of cinnamon. When you have your ingredients all staged, things go much smoother. You're not having to run to the cupboard all the time. And everything is within arm's reach right here. 1/2 teaspoon of soda, salt. It is a 1/2 teaspoon of salt. Now these ingredients I'm just going to whisk together. And then we're just going to put these in the bottom of the jar. Tamp it down just a little bit. Next, I'm grabbing the brown sugar. I'm testing it to be sure that it is nice and soft. And this calls for a 1/2 cup of the brown sugar. Now before it goes in, I'm going to loosen it. I have the tamper from my blender, so this makes a great tamper, especially for brown sugar. And what I have found is in these jars, we really want to have our brown sugar tamped down. Then we have 1/4 cup of granulated sugar. So our layers are starting to take place there. Then we need a 1/2 cup of chopped dried cherries. They're quite a bit larger than raisins, so I'd like to get them down to about the size of raisins. And now we're going to drop these in. And tamp them with our tamper. And then 1 1/4 cups of old-fashioned oats. Now, as you all know, we use our 6-grain cereal instead of old-fashioned oats. So that comes next. So that is 1 1/4 cup of our rolled 6-grain cereal. And if you don't have that, old-fashioned oats work just great. Now, we really need to tamp these oats down. Then it calls for bittersweet chocolate. So I bought a bar of this Ghirardelli. It says bittersweet chocolate, 60% cacao. So I used half of it in our original one, and I'm going to finish it off. It's not quite 3/4 cup, but it's fine. Now, bittersweet chocolate, this is what it looks like. It's a little bit more bitter than the semi-sweet chocolate chips that we get in the store, but it is close enough that if you don't have access to bittersweet chocolate like this, you can certainly use just regular chocolate chips. So I'm just going to chop this. Now, I did a better job of tamping on this one than I did on the other one. As you can see, we have a little space in the top of the jar, so that is just great. But I've got everything in, I just double checked. So we have now 2 jars of oatmeal cherry chocolate cookies. So that one is done. So give us a couple of minutes. I'm now going to stage for the next one, and let's do the double chip cookies next. We are back with our double chip cookies. And remember, this recipe is just called Cookie Mix in a Jar, giftable. And just to distinguish it from the others, I'm calling it double chip because that's what I put in for the mix-ins. So we'll talk about mix-ins in just a minute. Now notice that I have the flour mixture already in. I did the very same thing with the flour. It called for a little bit of cornstarch, baking powder, baking soda, and salt. Those are all now in the bottom of the jar. Next comes the brown sugar, and it calls for a cup of brown sugar, but the author here says that you can use half light and half dark for extra layers if you want that look. Well, I'm not caring about that look because these are just going in our food storage rather than gifts. So I'm just putting in a cup of brown sugar. Now I'm going to tamp it down because we have quite a few more ingredients we need to get to here. So one of those is 1/4 of a cup of regular sugar. And now we should have, hopefully, about 1.5 cups of space for what she calls our mix-ins. And it's wide open, whatever you want to do with the mix-ins. You could use pieces of peppermint, a crushed up candy cane. You can use any kind of chips that you want to, chocolate chip, white chips, mint chips, butterscotch chips, or she used red and green M&Ms. And then there's a possibility of nuts. So what I have chosen to do, and here again, I went to Ghirardelli. We found a store that carried some great ones. This is, I don't think this is a different brand, but I have mint chocolate chips and white chocolate chips, and then I have some pecans. So I am going to put, and we have 1.5 cups for the mix-ins. And then 1/2 cup of white chocolate chips. These are Ghirardelli. And then 1/2 cup of nuts on the top. And it's a stretch. So we'll be a little low on nuts, but we'll have full chips of both colors. So that's this one done. Oh yes, much nicer. Okay, let's see. Next up is cowboy cookies. So give us a minute and I'm going to do some prep and we'll come back. All right, now I'm going to do this one according to what it stated the order of the layers should be in the recipe, which I did not do. In this one, I put the flour first and then the oats, and it should be the other way around. And I'm hoping that some of the flour will then get down into the oats to give us just a little bit more room. So this is what we're striving for. This is what we're working on. I have the flour together, ready to go in when it's ready. But first of all, it calls for 1 1/3 cups of rolled oats. So again, there's 1 1/3. Now I am going to tamp these down. This one calls for the flour to be on the top. Wow, we're going to do it like it says. So it says to put them in the order given. So next is 1/2 cup of packed brown sugar. I have that one ready to go. So I thought the flour was next, but it isn't. So we'll tamp this down. Then a half a cup of white sugar. Half a cup of pecans. One cup. This calls for chocolate chips. I'm going to use butterscotch chips. And then the flour. So this is going to be interesting. This is the amount of flour that I have left. There is no way that that flour is going to fit in this little bit of space. So here's what we're going to do. It's close, but I think it made it quite ugly with the flour escaping down into the chips. So from now on, I am most definitely going to put it in this way. The flour goes in first, and then I'll layer everything else in. This is a much prettier result. So here's what we're going to do now. We're going to go off camera and clear the deck. And then we're going to come back and we're going to make one, we're going to make up one because the method, you can use the same method for all three, and it has worked out just fine. I wanted to do the chocolate cherry, but because of this mess with the cowboy cookies, I'm going to make up that one this morning. So when we come back, I will show you what you have to do to finish up the mix and turn them into cookies. All right, here we go for mixing up a batch of these cookies. Now, two of the three have the identical method in that you melt the butter, you add the egg and the vanilla, whisk that together, and then stir in the mix. The cowboy cookies say to soften the butter, not melt it, to soften the butter, and in a stand mixer, mix together the butter, the egg, and the vanilla, and then stir in the rest of the mix, and you might have to finish beating it by hand, or might finish mixing it by hand because it's going to be a stiff dough. So I'm going to elect to do this the very same way that I'm going to do the other two, which is to melt or almost all the way melt this butter. And then I'm going to add the egg, and they all call for the same thing, some amount of butter, 1 egg, and 1 teaspoon of vanilla. And I didn't know that they were that similar when I selected these recipes. So here's a tablespoon of vanilla, a little tiny bit more. A teaspoon of vanilla. They all call for 1 egg, 1 teaspoon vanilla, and some amount of butter. Then I'm going to just mix this together until it is thoroughly mixed. And here we go. That's not very liquidy, so it's going to be a very dry mix. Okay, so there's our cookie mix. And we're going to stir it together. That does not have sticking power. I'm going to be adding a little bit of water, and I'm going to add that to the notes in the recipe. That was 1/3 cup of water. All right, now we form these into balls the size of a walnut and put them on a cookie sheet 2 inches apart. So we will be back when these are ready to go into the oven. Here we go. We got 18 cookies, and I found shaping them was a lot less of a hassle if I dampened my hands first and then worked with the dough that way. So we'll put these in the oven and see how they turn out. All right, we're back, and the second tray is just about to come out of the oven. First of all, I wanted to remind you that if you like these cookies in jars, we have an entire book in our bookstore called Meals in Jars, Dry Mix Meals in Jars. And just remember that we're having this big Black Friday sale, the Friday right after Thanksgiving for 24 hours, from midnight to midnight on that Friday. And you can pick that up for 25% off if you are interested. So let's see how our cowboy cookies turned out. All right, here are a couple of things. First of all, you might look at this batch and see that they are a little bit browner, not burned. These are just absolutely fine, but they were getting too brown too fast. And so I put a second cookie sheet under, as you can see here, that these are on double cookie sheets. And these turned out just a little bit lighter, still done. And the instructions say that these need to cook for 11 to 13 minutes. These cooked from 15 to 18 minutes on the double sheet. So let's give these a taste. Jim and I have been waiting for this moment to give them a taste. So, oh, that engine's hot where I had that pan. So I'm just going to take this one and break it. Crunchy on the outside, soft on the inside. Ooh, I love those butterscotch chips. The texture is very nice. The taste is very nice. Remember, this is how I do it for my pantry. If I were going to be gifting these jars, I would make a nice top, ribbons around here, and I would do a little hang tag. And on the hang tag, I would have the name of the cookie as well as how you finish it up. So I'm really thrilled with these. This will give us 5 more batches to go. Now, I've been thinking about why I needed to add more water to the cowboy cookie mixture. And what I'm thinking is that each of these recipes call for a large egg. Well, I don't think my eggs are very large. And so that's why I had to add extra water. So don't hesitate to add extra water after you've mixed everything together if the dough is not sticking together and you can't either roll it the way we had to roll these, or the other two say to drop by rounded tablespoons. One is a tablespoon and a half size, one is a tablespoon size. And so go ahead and just do whatever additions or alterations that might make this easy. So I hope that this will, this information is useful for you for both getting a jump start on the holiday season with cookies that you can just make up in a flash, or with putting something on your food storage shelf that will give your family a treat when things get kind of tough. Either case, this is a great way to go. So if you try these recipes, please tell us how things turned out for you in comments below the video. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate that. And we will see you again very soon for more videos.